Okay, so we're still in the chapter of Los Aspáragos, which means the asparagus. And it's called that because it's asparagus season. And last chapter, a lot of action happened. The immigration called La Migra came and took away the strikers who were striking in front of the packing plant where Esperanza, Josefina, and Hortensia were packing asparagus. But then someone escaped and didn't get caught by the immigration, and it was Marta. And Esperanza decided to help her out. And Marta said to Esperanza, "I'm sorry I misjudged you." So it's a theme in this book, a lot of misjudging, making bad judgments about people who are different than you. Esperanza lay in bed that night and listened to the others in the front room talk about the sweeps and the deportations. "They went to every major grower and put hundreds of strikers on the buses," said Juan. "Some say they did it to create more jobs for those coming from the east," said Josefina. "We're lucky that the company needs us right now. If they didn't, we could be next." "We have been loyal to the company, and the company will be loyal to us," said Alfonso. "I'm just glad that it's over," said Hortensia. "It's not over," said Miguel. "In time, they'll be back, especially if they have families here. They will reorganize, and they will be stronger. And there will come a time when we will have to decide all over again whether to join them or not." Esperanza tried to go to sleep, but the day spun in her mind. She was glad she had kept working and thankful that her camp had voted not to strike, but she knew that under different circumstances, it could have been her on that bus. And then what would have Mama done? Her thoughts jumped back and forth. Some of those people did not deserve their fate today. How was it that the United States could send people to Mexico who had never even lived there? She couldn't stop thinking about Marta. It didn't matter if Esperanza agreed with her cause or not. No one should have to be separated from her family. Had Marta made her way back to the strikers' farm without getting caught? Had she found her mother? For some reason, Esperanza had to know. The next morning, she begged Miguel to drive by the farm. The field was still surrounded by the chain-link fence, but no one was protecting the entrance this time. All the evidence of people she had seen before was there, but not one person was to be seen. Laundry waved on the clothesline. Plates with rice and beans sat on crates and swarmed with busy flies. Shoes were lined up in front of tents, as if waiting for someone to step into them. The breeze picked up loose newspapers and floated them across the field. It was quiet and desolate, except for the goat still tied to the tree, bleating for freedom. "Immigration has been here too," said Miguel. He got out of the truck, walked over to the tree, and untied the goat. Esperanza looked out over the field that used to be crawling with people who they thought could change things, who were trying to get the attention of the growers and the government to make conditions better for themselves and for her too. More than anything, Esperanza hoped that Marta and her mother were together. But now there'd be no way for her to find out. Maybe Marta's aunt would hear eventually. Something colorful caught her eye. Dangling from a tree branch were the remnants of the little donkey piñata that she had given the children, its tissue streamers fluttering in the breeze. It had been beaten with a stick, its insides torn out. So we're going to start next chapter called Los Duraznos, which means the peaches. Los Duraznos. Now, along with her prayers for Abuelita and Mama, Esperanza prayed for Marta and her mother at the washtub grotto. Papa's roses, although still short and squat, had promising tight buds. But they weren't the only flowers there. She often found that someone had put a posy of sweet asylum in front of the statue, or a single iris, or had draped a honeysuckle vine over the top of the tub. Lately, she had seen Isabel there every evening after dinner, kneeling on the hard ground. "Isabel, are you saying a novena?" asked Esperanza when she found her at the statue, yet again one night. "It seems you have been praying for at least 9 days." So novena, 9. Isabel got up from her dedication and looked up at Esperanza. "I might be Queen of the May. In 2 weeks, on May Day, there's a festival at school, and a dance around a pole with colored ribbons. The teacher will choose the best girl student in our 3rd grade to be queen. And right now, I'm the only one who has straight A's. Then it might be you, said Esperanza. My friends told me that it is usually one of the English speakers that is chosen, the ones who wear nicer dresses. So I'm going to pray every day. Esperanza thought about all the beautiful dresses she had outgrown in Mexico, how she wished she could have passed them to Isabel. Esperanza began to worry that she would be disappointed. Well, even if you're not the queen, you will still be a beautiful dancer, right? Oh, but Esperanza, I want so much to be the queen. I want to be la reina, like you. She laughed. But regardless, you'll always be our queen. Esperanza left her there, devoutly praying, and went into the cabin. Has a Mexican girl ever been chosen Queen of the May? She asked Josefina. Josefina's face took on a disappointed look, and she silently shook her head no. I have asked. They always find a way to choose a blonde, blue-eyed queen. That's not right, said Esperanza, especially if it's based on grades. There's always a reason. That is the way it is, said Josefina. Melina told me that last year, the Japanese girl had the best marks in her third grade, and they still did not choose her. Then what is the point of basing it on marks? Asked Esperanza, knowing there was no answer to her question. Her heart already ached for Isabel. A week later, Esperanza put another bundle of asparagus on the table after work. The tall and feathery asparagus plants seemed to be as unrelenting as Isabel's desire to be queen. The workers picked the spears from the fields, and a few days later, the same fields had to be picked again because new shoots were already showing their heads. And Isabel talked of nothing else except the possibility of wearing the winner's crown of flowers on her head. I hate asparagus, said Isabel, barely looking up from her homework. During grapes, you hate grapes. During potatoes, you hate potatoes. And during asparagus, you hate asparagus. I suppose that during peaches, you will hate peaches? Isabel laughed. No, I love peaches. Hortensia stirred a pot of beans, and Esperanza took off the stained apron she wore on the sheds and put on another. She began measuring the flour to make tortillas. In a few minutes, she was patting the fresh dough that left her hands looking as if she wore white gloves. My teacher will choose the Queen of the May this week, said Isabel. Her entire body wiggled with excitement. Yes, you have told us, said Esperanza, teasing her. Do you have anything new to tell us? They're making a new camp for people from Oklahoma, said Isabel. Esperanza looked at Hortensia. Is that true? Hortensia nodded. They announced it at the camp meeting. The owner of the farm bought some army barracks from an old military camp and is moving them onto the property, not too far from here. They get inside toilets and hot water and a swimming pool, said Isabel. Our teacher told us all about it, and we will all be able to swim in it. One day a week, said Hortensia, looking at Esperanza. The Mexicans can only swim on Friday afternoons before they clean the pool on Saturday mornings. Esperanza pounded the dough a little too hard. Do they think we're dirtier than the others? Hortensia did not answer, but turned to the stove to cook a tortilla on the flat-back comal over the flame. She looked at Esperanza and held her finger to her mouth, signaling her not to discuss too much in front of Isabel. Miguel walked in, kissed his mother, then picked up a plate and a fresh tortilla and went to the pot of beans. His clothes were covered in mud that had dried gray. How did you get so dirty? Asked Hortensia. Miguel sat down at the table. A group of men showed up from Oklahoma. They said they would work for half the money, and the railroad hired all of them. He looked into his plate and shook his head. Some of them have never even worked on a motor before. My boss said that he didn't need me, that they were going to train some new men. He said I could dig ditches or lay tracks if I wanted. Esperanza stared at him, her floured hands in midair. What did you do? Can you not tell from my clothes? I dug ditches. His voice was sharp, but he continued eating as if nothing were wrong. Miguel, how could you agree to such a thing? Said Esperanza. Miguel raised his voice. What would you have me do instead? I could have walked out, but I would have no pay for today. Those men from Oklahoma have families too. We must all work at something or else we'll all starve. A temper Esperanza did not recognize raged to the surface. Then, like the irrigation pipes in the fields, when the water is first turned on, her anger burst forth. Why didn't you tell your bosses to tell the others to dig the ditches? She looked at the dough she was holding in her hands and threw it at the wall. It stuck for an instant and then slowly slid down the wall, leaving a darkened trail. Isabel's serious eyes darted from Miguel to Esperanza to Hortensia. Are we going to starve? No, they all answered at the same time. Esperanza's eyes were on fire. She stamped out of the cabin, slamming the door, and walked past the mulberry and the chinaberry trees to the vineyard. She hurried down a row, then cut over to another. Esperanza! She heard Miguel's voice in the distance, but she didn't answer. When she got to the end of one row, she moved up to another. Anza! She could hear him running down the rows, catching up with her. She kept her eyes on the tamarisk trees in the far distance and walked faster. Miguel eventually caught her arm and pulled her around. What is the matter with you? Is this the better life that you left Mexico for? Is it? Nothing is right here. Isabel will certainly not be the queen, no matter how badly she wants it, because she is Mexican. You cannot work on engines because you are Mexican. We have gone to work through angry crowds of our own people who have thrown rocks at us. And I'm afraid they might have been right. They send people back to Mexico, even if they don't belong there, just for speaking up. We live in a horse stall, and none of this bothers you? Have you heard that they're building a new camp for Okies with a swimming pool? The Mexicans could only swim in it on the afternoon before they clean it. Have you heard that they will be given inside toilets and hot water? Why is it that, Miguel? Is it because they are the fairest in the land? Tell me, is this life really better than being a servant in Mexico? Miguel looked out over the grapes, where the sun set low on the horizon, casting long shadows in the vineyard. He turned back to her. In Mexico, I was a second-class citizen. I stood on the other side of the river, remember? And I would have stayed that way my entire life. At least here I have a chance, however small, to become more than what I was. You obviously can never understand this because you have never lived without hope. She clenched her fist and closed her eyes tight in frustration. Miguel, do you not understand? You are still a second-class citizen because you act like one. Let them take advantage of you like that. Why don't you go to your boss and confront him? Why don't you speak up for yourself and your talents? You are beginning to sound like the strikers, Esperanza, said Miguel coldly. There is more than one way to get what you want in this country. Maybe I must be more determined than others to succeed, but I know that it will happen. Aguántate tantito y la fruta caerá en tu mano, which means wait a while and the fruit will fall in your hands. I'm going to pause there because we're over time right now, but we'll continue this discussion that they're having tomorrow.